A few weeks ago, my father approached me with a printout of something he had found on the internet. He asked me, as he often does, if I could help him make sense of this. My dad explained that he had been doing some research about my mom's health issues and wanted to understand a treatment option that her doctor had recommended. I glanced down at the paper and saw an isolated paragraph that he had taken from a study. There was no context for what I was looking at. It appeared to be a scholarly source, but I couldn't be sure. The writing was convoluted, and I saw that there were only 49 participants involved in this study. In the end, I deciphered what I could for him, but I was left with more questions than answers. This conversation made me reflect upon the work we are doing in this class. My dad is an educated man, but his experience with academic literacies is limited and in the distant past. Unlike me, he has very little practice reading medical studies, and further, his comfort level in English is lower. He was shocked when I explained that many academic writers use deliberately confusing language, and surprised when I told him that we need to look at the broader context of the research, including where it was published and whether it was peer-reviewed. I think we both learned a bit about each other that day. I draw upon my family story here for many reasons. Firstly, because this course has opened my eyes to how privileged I am. Looking back on my literacy narrative, I am humbled by the educational opportunities I've had and the generous mentors who have shaped the way I move through academia. Secondly, I feel that this class has given me the language to articulate my experiences with literacy and helped to mediate my conversations on this topic. Finally, I mention my father because I find myself continually exploring the infinity of traces that history has left in me, to quote philosopher Antonio Gramsci. As I discussed in my literacy narrative, I have found autoethnography to be an incredibly meaningful window into academic investigations. Everything leads back to the archives within me. In this digital essay, I argue that the threshold concepts of creativity and emotional intelligence that I have encountered in this course are inextricably entwined with autoethnography. Since a young age, I have used creativity to make sense of my experiences as a child of immigrants growing up in Newfoundland. Writing has been my solace and my strength, but this class has transformed my tacit knowledge of creativity into a deeper understanding of the creative process. Similarly, I have long been curious about emotional intelligence and how I can foster healing in both myself and my loved ones. Education 2700 has reinforced for me the strong connections between scholarly and creative work. By investigating the links between creativity and self-compassion, I hope to make strides in my autoethnographic projects as a student, writer, and future educator. This class has allowed me to cross the threshold in understanding creativity, emotional intelligence, and their connections to one another. As a longtime writer, it has been invaluable to learn about the ideal circumstances to facilitate the creative process. I have been repeatedly guilty of commencing a project and quickly being shut down by a negative inner voice or the anticipation of a judgment that never comes. Education 2700 has made this intelligible by illustrating the need for a space free from criticism and a state where ideas can flow freely and copiously. If I fret over every word I add to this essay, cowering in fear of potential judgment, of course this will hinder my writing and shut down my boldest, riskiest ideas. Similarly, I walk away from this class with a deeper understanding of emotional intelligence and particularly self-compassion. Kristin Neff defines the latter as a kindness towards the self, a mindful awareness, and an embracing of our common humanity. I feel that this attitude is profoundly connected to the freedom from judgment that is necessary for creative pursuits. By practicing self-compassion in my writing, I can take care of myself while producing my strongest work. These lessons on creativity and emotional intelligence have shown themselves to be threshold concepts in accordance with Meyer and Land's 2003 definitions. They have transformed my paradigms, and I feel certain that I will never forget them. They have also integrated my parallel learning, bridging my academic writing with my creative work, and radiated outwards towards my artistic efforts in dance and in life. As such, this new knowledge has truly shaped the way I think, work, and create. Moreover, creativity and emotional intelligence, in my experience, are tightly wound around the method of autoethnography, of knowing and representing the self. As defined by Ellison Adams in 2014, autoethnography is the work of an author to retroactively and selectively write about past experiences. Despite encountering criticism for its more informal approach, autoethnography can be academically rigorous, as argued by Gallardo and Gendaitis in 2020. It can pull together writer, culture, and context to offer nuanced insights and novel ideas. My first major piece of creative writing was a nonfiction essay about my job as an interpreter at Capesbury Lighthouse National Historic Site. In this piece, I grappled with the fact that visitors would immediately perceive me as a non-Newfoundlander, despite the fact that I was born and raised in St. John's. This writing was profoundly personal, and it motivated me to work through the first two steps of emotional intelligence as described by Daniel Goleman. It helped me to recognize my emotions through processing and reflecting, and to manage them, because writing in itself is therapeutic. Simultaneously, this project allowed me to explore greater sociocultural topics such as immigration and microaggressions, all through a telling of my own story. In this manner, I feel a profound connection between creativity, healing, and autoethnography. My family stories are what light my inspiration and curiosity about the world. They push me to look inward, to take what I find there, and make sense of my outer world. It comes as no surprise, then, that these stories have been the driving force behind my academic investigations as well, and they continue to shape me while I train as an educator. My MA thesis gave me the chance to delve into the narratives of immigrant and refugee writers, to hear their voices with intimacy and vulnerability, and to position their messages across an important backdrop of diasporic Canadian scholarship. Because my background is in English, I feel at home when conducting humanities research, relying on primary text to support claims, drawing on theory, and examining the literary analyses of published scholars. It has been a learning curve to adapt to my education courses this fall and to discover what research looks like in this field. As I worked on my academic essay for Assignment B in this course, I found myself reading through studies with participants, surveys, and statistics, all concepts that are completely out of my comfort zone. Evidence means something different in education, and research often bridges the gap between theory and practice. Even the way that we format is different in education, and as a student trained in MLA, I've had to teach myself how to operate in the new world of APA instead. Ultimately, I do feel that scholars can move between disciplines with transferable skills. After all, writing, critical thinking, and the citing of evidence are essential abilities in any field. But it has taken time and concentration to adapt my skills to the study of education this fall, and to familiarize myself with the academic literacies of this discipline. Every step of the way, I have felt grateful for the privilege to learn in this safe and supportive environment. These opportunities were not always available to my ancestors, and they are certainly not available to all who seek education in today's world. So, to learn, to be challenged, even to be a bit overwhelmed by it all, is something I appreciate deeply. Looking towards the future, I feel the strategies I have explored this semester will be transformative in the classroom. Creativity and emotional intelligence are invaluable to academic work, but they are also essential life skills that assist in problem solving, self-expression, and stress tolerance. As explored by Verger et al. In 2022, there is also growing evidence for the connection between creativity and emotional intelligence. Studies are suggesting that artistic pursuits can help to regulate emotions and support function in day-to-day life. For these reasons, I feel it is important to explore these methods in education, not only so students can engage in their academic work with artistry and ingenuity, but also so that their outside lives and greater communities can thrive. Underlying all of this is the lens of autoethnography, of encouraging my students to draw connections between course content and their own lives and histories. In my literacy narrative, I drew upon a 2000 study by Karpiak in which autobiography was used as a final assignment and shown to consolidate learning and facilitate significant personal development. This paper quotes one of the participants, a student who says, "Autobiography helps an individual find how the course material fits into their life, as opposed to having the instructor do it for you." To draw on our personal stories renders learning deeply intimate, relevant, and memorable. I picture autoethnography, creativity, and emotional intelligence as a continuous circle, where each feeds into the others through powerful engagement, reflection, and intention. To work with any of these elements is to deepen one's understanding of the others. To work with all three forms a type of synergy, leading to creations that are profoundly inspiring and even paradigm shifting. When I picture my future classroom, many visions come to mind. I imagine students cutting out words from magazines and creating found poetry, using creativity and intertextuality to express academic ideas and arguments. I visualize assignments where learners explore their family histories to reflect on their ancestors' privilege and oppression, persecution, migrations, inspirations, dreams, disappointments, and heartbreaks. I want them to investigate how those who came before them influence who they are today, as I have had the chance to do myself. I think about my grandparents on my father's side who had to flee across a newly created border between India and Pakistan when the British left India in 1947. Caught in the midst of violence and chaos, they left with the clothes on their backs and barely made it out alive. These events profoundly impacted the way my grandparents raised my father, and the way, in turn, that my father raised me, with ideas of safety, scarcity, and security at the top of his mind. These family stories are what inspire me to create, to explore, and also to heal as the first generation with the mental health resources to really process intergenerational trauma. As such, when I stand at the front of a classroom and look out over my students, I see a room full of people who are shaped by forces that they must get to know, forces that they must investigate with urgency, intimacy, and compassion. And when my dad prints out studies from the internet and asks me for my opinion, I know there is something greater at play here. It is an acknowledgement of the educational opportunities I have had here in Canada and the literacy skills I have honed along the way. I hope to put these skills to the best use possible in my future classrooms and to encourage in my students a lifelong pursuit of learning and growth that centers around responsible thinking, non-judgmental listening, and the pursuit of justice in our greater communities. Thank you.